Hey y'all, I am so excited about this episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. You will hear me continue to talk about Excel app. I downloaded the app and it is amazing. I had Katara McCarthy on the podcast today, and she shared with us about why she created this app for women of color. And it was birthed out of what was going on during the pandemic and the systemic racism, and she shared who she was and why she created it. I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you let her know. And also, this app currently is free, so make sure you download it on Apple and also on Android. If you want to support me and the podcast, do me a favor. Share this episode with somebody that you love. Rate me where you listen to podcasts. You can also follow me on all social media sites. You can find me at Celeste the Therapist. Don't forget, we stream live. Yes, these podcasts are live. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Mondays and Thursdays. And if you want to be on the show, you have a great show idea, all you got to do is email me, admin, ADMIN, at CelesteTherapist.com. Let's get into this amazing episode.
And my message, and I just want to put this, I want to get on the mountaintop and just scream this from the mountaintop, put a megaphone to my mouth, is Black, Indigenous women of color, rest is resistance. Rest is doing the work. So it's not an either or. It's not like I'm going to just rest and not show up for my community. It's actually, I'm going to rest and I'm going to breathe and I'm going to retreat so that I can show up even better for my community in an even more powerful way.
365 days, but I treat every day like it's my last. I'm only concerned with building on the future, cause I can't change my past. Positive vibes for positive lives. She just giving you that truth and shifting your mind. It's more mental than you realize. It's up to you to take control, cause this world is cold and negativity gon' take its toll. Now we've been told any day could be your last. I'm embracing every moment and I cherish every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste the Therapist. Let's go.
I have a really special guest. I'm going to introduce her with a clip on what she's doing, and then we're going to hear from her. So
a woman right here in Indianapolis has created an app specifically for Black women, and it's focused on self-care. Katara McCarthy tells us recent events, from protests to moments of racial injustice, can sometimes be a lot to bear for people of color.
We started seeing Ahmaud Arbery videos, and we heard about Breonna Taylor, and then George Floyd. Those videos went viral. And just the amount of grief and pain and stress that I was feeling and that I could feel collectively with the Black community was so massive.
all right, so let's bring on Katara.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm so good. I just feel so honored to just be hanging out with you tonight.
Yes, I'm honored to have you after that amazing clip. So one of the things that I do is I like to hear people's story, right? And we were able to kind of hear why you started this app, but I think it's important to understand like who you are. So tell me a little bit about where you were born.
Yeah. So we got to throw it back to 1972. For this, I was born in 1972 in Indiana, small town here in Indiana, Kokomo. And my mother went to the hospital like many mothers when it's time to give birth, and she had me. But instead of being excited and bringing me home, she had me and then abandoned me at the hospital. And so my biological mother is white and my biological father is Black, so I'm biologically biracial. And so I went into foster care And they were having some challenges placing me because it was 1972, and back then it was very, very taboo to marry outside your race. And it was back in the 60s, like 67, 68, it was still illegal to marry anybody outside your race here in the state of Indiana. And it was illegal, like by law.
Oh,
So, yeah. And so, it's still very, you just didn't step outside of your own race, especially to have a child out of wedlock. And so there were a lot of things at play in her life. But one of the things was that, she was pregnant and did have a Black baby. And so she lived in even a smaller town than what I was raised in. And it just wasn't acceptable. And so she abandoned me at the hospital. I went into foster care. They were having, it was challenging to place me because I was biracial. And so white families didn't want me because I was too Black, and Black families were a little unsure, right, about raising a biracial child. And so my file came across this woman's desk. She called her niece, who had been talking about adopting another baby girl. She had already adopted one. And she called her niece and said, "Hey, we have this baby. We'd like to get her placed in a home. I know you've been talking about adopting. What do you think?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm open to it." And she said, "Well, I need to let you know she is biologically biracial. Her biological mother's white, dad's Black." And her niece was like, "Bring that baby to my house. Give me that baby." So I got dropped off to 707 East Jefferson Street in Kokomo, Indiana, in 1972 to Betty Waters, who was an amazing, amazing, fierce, there's so many words that could describe this woman, Black woman who raised me and took me in. Her and her mother, they pulled their resources together to purchase a home years before she adopted my sister and then adopted me, and wanted kids, decided she was never married, and raised me. So I was raised in this beautiful home with these beautiful Black women, great food, predominantly Black neighborhood. So surrounded by this amazing Black community. And so while I weave through life in this biracial body, I completely identify as a Black woman, which has kind of been an interesting dynamic in my life as well. And so, we grew up without a dad, and, that led to its own, issues. I also, as I got to be a teenager, we've always known that we were adopted. I've always known I was adopted. And so, definitely facing some issues came up around not having a father, and also this sense of abandonment, like, what's wrong with me? Am I not enough? Am I too much? Also, being in a biracial body in a Black neighborhood back then it was not common to see little girls that looked like me. So I stuck out like a sore thumb, and I hated that. Like, I just wanted to be like everybody else, like everybody else.
When you say little girls that look like you, are you because you were very light?
Yes, right. It was a Black neighborhood. And so I didn't really, even when I went to school, like when I started going to school, white little girls would point out that my skin was different, right? Like, there was one little girl in second grade that we bonded on the first day of school, only for her to come back the next day and say, "My mommy said we can't be friends because you're Black." And so there was this, I was pretty aware early on that I was different. And while at my home, I got tons of love, always felt very much like this was my family. There were little things that let me know that I was different. Like, my grandmother would hot comb her hair and my mom's hair and my sister's hair. And then I'd sit in the chair and she'd be like, "Sissy, we can't hot comb your hair." So there'd be little things that was like, oh, I don't quite, like, while I have so much love and acceptance and always felt like I belonged, there was a part of me that was like, where do I really belong? And so as I got older, trying to unpacking this sense of abandonment, unpacking, as Black and brown people, we face systemic racism pretty early on in our lives, and kind of facing that. My sister is Black. She's not biracial. And so just even doing life with her And she's also gay, and so the intersectionality that she faces, and so it's just been an interesting kind of journey that I've been on, and really had to get a therapist and a coach to begin to unpack all of that. And I've been saying a lot in interviews, is in doing that led me on this journey to kind of really deal with my stuff, and also really come back home to myself. And when I was able to come back home to myself and begin to kind of rewrite my story, reclaim my story and rewrite my story and deal with my issues, that some of those issues were caused by other people's decisions, right? Like my mother abandoned me at the hospital. Like that wasn't my decision. I was an innocent human in that situation, but it caused problems for me, right? And so I had to really begin to take this journey of unpacking all of that, reclaiming my story, rewriting my story, and really coming home to myself. And that took a lot of work. That took a lot of work, a lot of tears, a lot of grief, a lot of staring my truth in the face, which isn't easy to do. But yeah, so I feel like, I'm 48 years old, so I feel like, oh, there you are. Hey, you, I know you, right? It's taken some time to kind of do that work.
One thing you said I wanted to highlight was you had to, recognize a lot of the stuff you were dealing with was things that other people have done. Mm-hmm. And you're carrying this with you. And that was your lens on life for a long time. Mm-hmm. Right. And so once you begin to unpack that, you start to see yourself for who you are and not for what was done to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I think when things happen to us, while my mom abandoned me at the hospital, that didn't mean that I wasn't lovable or that I wasn't worthy, right? But I carried that for a really long time. And once I realized, her issues are not my issues. Who doesn't love a little infant baby? Oh my gosh, it's an infant, it's a newborn. Newborns are amazing. There's not a newborn that's not amazing, right? So that's not my issue, but I carried that for a long time. And once I was able to kind of separate, wait a minute, that was her issues and her decisions. While that impacted me, they're not mine. And so I had to kind of decipher, no, that's yours. And now this is mine. And what do I do with this? So it's a process. It takes a lot of courage too.
It does. That's a testimony in and of itself. And so we understand where you're coming from, right? And how challenging this was, just being biracial, the abandonment. But then you're also able to acknowledge that you had a lot of love, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. Now let's fast forward. Now we're in 2020, right? The pandemic happens. What are you doing during this time? March happens. The president comes on and there's this lockdown happening. What happens to you and where are you in life at that point?
Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a coach, a personal development coach. I also coach organizations around vision, values, any issues that they're having. So had a pretty decent clientele. I'm also a public speaker. And so was really excited about 2020 and building my clientele and continuing to get out and speak. Had locked in some speaking engagements, was really feeling jazzed about the year. And March came and we went on the lockdown. And I mean, within 1 week, Celeste, I lost over half my clientele. It was all of that came to a screeching halt. And I was oh my gosh, this is not good. This is not planned, right? And so lots of anxiety, lots of stress that impacts my checking account, right? I still got bills that are coming in. And so I started trying to manage my anxiety and stress. So I was reaching for apps that I normally would reach for to help manage meditation and breath work. And, I'm a coach. So things that I encourage my clients to do, I had to really amp that up. And so I was amping up my self-care, amping up my emotional well-being practices. And then what was happening in the news was they were reporting on how the Black community was being impacted disproportionately by COVID. And And then they would say that, and that was it. And I was just like screaming at the TV. I'm like, well, that's not the full narrative. We aren't getting COVID more because our skin's brown, right? Like, it's because of systemic racism. Like this, you're not telling the full story. So I was super frustrated about that. And then what started hitting our news feeds was the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, the killing of Breonna Taylor. We watched George Floyd say some of his last words, "I can't breathe," in our news feeds. And the level of stress and anxiety that I could feel personally, but that I could also feel with the collective community, it felt like very hopeless and almost like we were hemorrhaging, right? Like, this is just beyond what I had ever experienced in my lifetime. And so I was just like, what can I do? Like, what can I do to help my community? And I got on a call with a lot of Black leaders, and somebody said, we have to stop waiting for the government to come for us, and we have to step up as the community and take care of ourselves. And that just like hit me like right in my heart. And I went to bed that night, cried myself to sleep. And I woke up the next day and I was like, I have to do something. I have to play my part in like leaning in and helping my community. What is that? What does that look like? And so a couple days later, I reached for my phone to kind of, again, go through some meditation with these apps. And there was such a disconnect. They were like, think about good thought. I was just like, do you not know that like somebody was literally like, I'm like, do you not know what's happening? And, you know, it's not to slam these apps, but, you know, they record these meditations year in advance. But it was in what was playing out in my life in real time was not reflected in the apps that I was reaching for.
And I think, and also with me being a therapist and hearing from my clients and this back to work as usual, like all these things are happening. And I think there's a huge disconnect when you are not, you know, just same way with the kid wants a cookie, they can't have a cookie. We're like, it's just a cookie. But if we were a kid, we would understand the dynamic of their frustration because they can't have a cookie, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think people that are not Black, they don't understand the racism. It is back to work as usual because they're not affected. So what you're saying is that a lot of the apps, they're fine, but for what you needed them to be, you could not find that.
I couldn't. And I mean, there are a couple of apps. I have to shout out Liberate app. It's for people of color. It's a meditation app. And then there's also an app that it's founded by brown and Black women called Shine. Mm-hmm. And they have started having like a section on there for people of color. Mm-hmm. But that was what was out at the time, right? And being a woman, and also, you know, my sister, again, who has several intersections in her life with being gay and Black, like I just felt like I wanted to create something specifically for women or those that have gender identities oppressed by racism and misogyny, just for us, like even like hone in and be like, okay, I want to create something just for us. And that's more than just a meditation app. Like I wanted it to be an emotional well-being app. So I was like, what if I put in the app what I give my clients, and also my own practices for emotional well-being. And so it's more than a meditation app. And so I got the idea at the end of April when everything was going on. I mean, we were going to, here in Indianapolis, there was a young man, Deshaun Reed, that was killed. We were going to marches for that, Black Lives Matter. We were like, my husband and I drove to Louisville to participate in what was happening there around Breonna Taylor's death. And so killing. And so we really, you know, we were trying to like show up for the community. And this was one way for me that I was like, I think that I could create this. And I'm not a tech person. I don't claim to be a tech person. I mentioned I was 48 years old. I remember when computers came out. Sometimes I need my daughters to help me figure this phone out, right? Like, But I knew that I was being drawn by this bigger, it felt like this why. This is why I need to do it. I'll figure out the what. I'll figure out how to do it.
What does that feel like for entrepreneurs that are listening to this right now? Because you're being drawn to create something that you don't know how it's going to happen. And I know a lot of people, especially people of color, we are very big on creating, but I think a lot of fear sets in. How do you keep pushing forward despite the fact that you're not really sure how this is going to look for you as far as building this app out?
Yeah, for me, I felt this great draw to meet a need. And the why was so much bigger than my fear or my doubts or the what or how. There was this overwhelming, like, I have to do this. It felt very divine. It felt like I was being pulled like a magnet, right, to another magnet. Like, it was like I couldn't say no to it. It was so obvious to me. And then it was like confirmation after confirmation. I would talk to people, or I would jump on a webinar and they're like, we have to take care of our emotional well-being and we need to meditate. And I found out that all these things were like popping up that I'm like, what? Like, I'm supposed to, it was like, I knew that this was the right next step. And so we just Googled, I'm like, how do you create an app? Like, I don't know. And so we just started. My husband helped me. I got my daughters on board. I have 2 adult daughters. They got on board. I wanted it to be curated by us, for us. And so I wrote all the meditations. My daughters and I narrated all of the meditations and the breath work. We added guided visualizations in there to help people go on an internal journey, which is a lot of how I work with my clients. We use our imagination. So we put some of that in there, some coaching talks. And, I called my producer who produces my podcast, and I told them what I was doing, and they were looking for ways to show up for the Black community. They're a white-owned business, and they pro bonoed all the production work for it. It was amazing. It was like another sign. I talked to my PR firm that I had been their coach. I had been coaching their executive team. So there was a relationship there. And so I told them what I was doing. And they're like, we want to pro bono all the PR work for you for 6 months. It was amazing how people rallied around me. And we figured it out, and we put out a beautiful product that I'm really proud of. And that is really, it has become what I hoped it would become, which is a true resource for Black, Indigenous women of color, specifically Black women in this season of all of our lives. Yeah, it's been really a beautiful experience.
So how did you come up with the name, right? This is called Exhale, right?
Yeah, it's called Exhale. Yeah, the name, really, I was really struck by the I can't breathe, the last words that George Floyd said. And everything that I was listening to, I was really surrounding myself, and again, with Black people in the Black community, and how were we going to show up for each other. And every time I would kind of lean in, somebody would mention that, and it felt like that had become our cry, and it has been our cry for 400 years, right? Systemic racism has had its knee on our necks, right? It has kept us oppressed. And what I know about breath work, what I know about stillness and practicing mindfulness is it's all about connecting to your breath. And while we cannot tear down systemic racism tomorrow, and we may not see it dissolved in our lifetime, what we can control is our breath. I can't control when I leave the house, the microaggressions that I may face, the anti-Blackness, like all the things, like the racism. But what I can control is my breath. And if I can come back to my breath and understand that there's actually a science and something physical happens in our bodies when we pause and breathe, that we're getting trauma out of our bodies. If we hold trauma, it makes us physically sick. It actually makes us sick. And so if I can do breath work, I can pause and meditate, I can work that trauma out of my body. I can work that anxiety out of my body, and it becomes a tool to reduce stress. And if I can learn how to reduce stress, I can learn how to stay healthier mentally. I can stay healthier physically. And so I was like, what if we exhaled instead of holding our breath, right? Like waiting for the next onslaught of racism or the next killing, because that's what the Black community is. That's literally what's happening. When our kids leave our front door, we don't know if they're coming home. We don't know that. That's not guaranteed for us, right? And so there's this tension in this, right? This inhale, and we're holding our breath. And my hope and my desire was like, oh, what if the Black community could just exhale? Like, what if we could just breathe? And that became, and also I love Waiting to Exhale, movies from the 90s. Like, come on, like who doesn't love that movie? It's like from my era. So I'm like, what if we don't wait to exhale? What if we don't? What if we actually exhale? It can really be empowering for our community.
That's so good. And one of the things you said I've been trying to preach to people is that systemic racism is not ending tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I've been super passionate about talking to people about creating joy, creating peace. There's peace and stillness. Can you tell people about, because I think there's this thing, well, we have to do this and we have to do this. I was like, I know we do, but we need you to be here in order to keep this fight going. We'll run out of steam. Can you tell people that, how powerful it is to take care of yourself and exhale, and it actually allow you to be more powerful to fight the fight, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's what especially Black women do. We fight and we fight and we fight. And we show up for our community. We show up for people. We take care of people, right? We're constant. I mean, even like the election, literally Black women carried the election, right? Like we got out the vote, like it was Black women. And I think that that's really powerful, but there's a part of that that makes me sad because I know how hard we work and what that takes out of us. And normally we don't take a break. There is no rest. So then we do get burnout. We do make ourselves mentally and physically sick because we're not retreating. And my message, and I just want to put this, I want to get on the mountaintop and just scream this from the mountaintop, put a megaphone to my mouth, is Black, Indigenous women of color, rest is resistance. Rest is doing the work. So it's not an either or. It's not like I'm going to just rest and not show up for my community. It's actually, I'm going to rest and I'm going to breathe and I'm going to retreat so that I can show up even better for my community and in an even more powerful way. Because we have the everyday stressors like everybody else, but on top of it is racism, right? It's systems of oppression that are stressing us out even more, right? And so we have to pull back, and it's a both and. It's I'm breathing, I'm taking time for myself, and I'm showing up for my community. Instead of I'm showing up for my community, I'm showing up for my community to my own detriment. I don't think that that's how it should work. And so my message is push the pause button, take a break, take some time for yourself, really prioritize your mental health and your emotional health. You have to prioritize that. And so that you can show up fully in a way that's actually productive, even more productive for the community. Yeah.
Yes. And even though me and Katara feels very strongly about this, I do want you to tell people about the fact that when you're not used to doing things a certain way, this will feel like a foreign concept to your body. I feel like people stop the process because they start to feel selfish, or it feels like this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And I would say you just keep being consistent. Eventually you will get used to this idea of rest. Because with you being a coach, I'm sure you're faced with people who struggle with really taking 5 minutes to just breathe.
Absolutely. It's so hard for people because they push the pause button and they sit, and then they're just kind of twiddling their thumbs like, okay, I have a lot of thoughts happening in my mind right now. I'm actually creating my to-do list. It's like, no. Just literally push the pause button. And the more you do it, the more you'll exercise that muscle. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? Like I start lifting weights. Like I'm not going to see results tomorrow, But if I continue to work out, like my body will respond, like I'll become healthier. I'll have, my blood pressure will be better. I'll have positive impact, but I won't see that positive impact overnight. And I think that we have to really take our mental and emotional well-being serious, right? And understand that this is something that has to become a daily practice, that eventually I will see the result. I'll sleep better. Really, you will be physically healthier. You'll have clarity. You'll have peace of mind. You'll be more creative. If you're an entrepreneur, you'll be more creative, the more ideas will come. And so I think that we have to prioritize our emotional and mental health, but it is a practice. And it can just be, I tell people all the time, you don't have to like get in a yoga pose and, for 20 minutes. Like, this is 5 minutes. This is 7 minutes. This is 15 minutes. This is sitting in your car after work before you go in the house to the crazy kids and the craziness inside the home. You can sit in your car and actually do some breath work and use Exhale as a resource to guide you through that. And I think that's what's so important about the app, is sometimes we don't know what to do. How do I practice emotional well-being? How do I do that? Well, you have Exhale as a resource that can actually, like, you just open it up, click on a meditation, click on a breath work, and we'll guide you. We'll guide you on what to do. It's 15 minutes, it's 20 minutes, it's 5 minutes, it's 7 minutes. And it doesn't have to be an hour. You don't have to, feel like you have to be this like guru or something, like, right? But you got to make it a practice. It's got to be something that you really put into your life every day, because you deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it.
That's good. Now, we've talked about the app. How can people find the app if this is something somebody's listening to and they're like, I want this app right now? How could they?
Yeah, so you can go to the App Store, Apple App Store, and if you just put in Exhale app, you can put in Exhale app BIWOC, BIWOC, and it should pop right up. Or you could get it on Google Play. You can go to Google Play and download it. It's free to download. Every single page is free. It's open right now with everything that was happening. I am an entrepreneur. And so my plan was to create a freemium model. A part of the app was free. Part of it was subscription based. And I just, Jacob Blake got shot literally 2 days before we launched the app. I heard his sister speak. And I just was like, I'm not going to make people pay for this. So it's free. Eventually we'll put out version 2 and we'll have a paywall and all that stuff. But right now I was like, you know what? My community is literally hemorrhaging. I felt like our souls were so dehydrated and we couldn't catch our breath. And so I'm like, it's free to download. All the pages are free right now. So please use it. You don't have to pay anything to access it or use it.
So this is really good. I'm excited about it. And thank you for your contribution. That's amazing. And it just I think when all of this stuff started, I wasn't financially or literally affected by it. And I wanted to give back, which is why I started to come on video live. I was coming on 5 days a week, and I felt the heaviness from everything that was happening, and just not just with my clients, but just everything. And I think it took me a while to understand systemic racism, right? I just thought life was a struggle. I didn't understand, I think, until Trayvon Martin, not when he was killed, but when the verdict came in, and seeing these GoFundMe pages for the guy that killed him, and the people that made these excuses. And then I think Sandra Bland, because she was me, right? And I think, people like you who are just as affected to come out and create something amazing in such a short amount. It feels like a short time. Like, we're still in 2020 and you have so much promo and you're really going through. And so I just really want to say, thank you. That's amazing. So thank you for everything that you do. I do want you to tell people about your podcast, because not only did you create the fact that you created this app because you cared about people shows your heart, right? Because you already know how to do the breath work. You already know how to do this stuff, but you wanted to give back. And like you said, we can't wait for people to come save us, right? We have to do it ourselves. So I just want to acknowledge your heart is huge, and I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, podcast, Red Lips and Eye Rolls. I started this podcast in 2019. So I'm 2 years in. And in the beginning, it was like giving coaching tips all of 2019. Most of 2019, toward the end of the year, I decided to shift it and really feature Black women and femmes voices, their stories, their struggle, their art, their work, their books, all of the things. So we center Black women and femmes voices and really center them, because those voices are normally kept at bay from us. Like us being able to learn from Black women, the authors, all of that has been kept at bay from everyone. And so my audience is diverse, but we center Black voices, specifically women and femmes. And so it's all about learning, gaining wisdom. It is fly. It's amazing. I love red lipstick and I roll my eyes a lot. So that's why we named it that. I'm constantly eye rolling something or somebody. And so we named it Red Lips and Eye Rolls. It's on most streaming platforms. You can find it. And we're going to have Celeste on. We're going to have you on Red Lips and Eye Rolls. Bring some of your therapist wisdom to the table.
I would so love that, because I enjoy talking. This is truly amazing. Before you go, one of the things I always ask my guests, because we talked about a lot, just even without the app, just your story and how you were able to get to your healing process. If somebody's listening to this and they're feeling like, wow, like that sounds like my story, whether it's struggling with who they are, or I think just creating this app, and this is not your area of expertise. Mm-hmm. You're not a tech person. So, what would you say to somebody that's struggling right now in this moment? Because I like to give people like concrete tips about what they can do now to kind of work on pushing forward despite the circumstances, because, we got to walk by faith, I think. Because if we walk by sight, we ain't going nowhere.
That's so true.
What would you say to people that may be inspired by you right now?
I would just say it takes being vulnerable and reaching out for help. I think a lot of times we see people and we think, wow, like, look what they did. Well, they may have done something really amazing or created something really amazing or started this business or organization or nonprofit. They didn't do that by themselves. Right? They didn't do that by themselves. And also, even if it's not starting something, maybe it's, you're like, wow, like, look at, Katara now compared to this baby that was abandoned. Like, wow, she must have some special secret sauce. Like, I don't. I reached out for help. I got therapy. I got a Celeste, right? I had to get therapy. I had to get a coach. I had to surround myself with good people and really lean into my support system and say, hey, I'm not doing well today, right? Like, I don't want to get out of bed, or having really good friends that check in on me and say, hey, are you doing okay? And me being honest and vulnerable and saying, I'm actually not doing okay, right? And I think giving ourselves, so doing that, being vulnerable with other people and pulling them in and saying, I actually need help. I need help around whatever it is that you're having challenges to take the next step in. And also being really giving yourself permission to have a wide range of emotions. I think that we sometimes put parameters on ourselves and we think, oh, I'm not being positive enough, or there's no time to be angry or sad. There's no time to grieve. And I think that we need to open up and give ourselves more room and grace to experience and to have a wide range of emotions. So if I'm not feeling on top of the world one day, and maybe I need to go back to bed and sleep another hour, right? Or whatever it is, like giving myself permission to do that. If I feel sad and I feel, this level of grief coming up around losing a job or losing a loved one or life not turning out the way I wanted to, or losing a relationship, like giving myself permission to grieve. So I think being vulnerable with asking for help and leaning into people, but also being vulnerable with yourself and saying, you know what, I'm feeling kind of down in the dumps today, and that's okay. That's okay. I don't have to always be like strong. I don't always have to be strong. I don't always have to be strong. So being vulnerable, I think, is key.
I love it, especially because, I tell people we're not robots, and so for us to honor our emotions is extremely powerful because we're human, and part of the human experience is like we're going to feel pain.
Absolutely.
And another thing that you said was, I didn't start here at Celeste Therapist Podcast, and throughout my podcast, I share my story. And I think that it's hard in the age of social media for people to see that, like, they just see where you are now, but don't understand. And you start to compare. You're comparing. If you look at me and Katara, you're just comparing yourself to a highlighted reel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not the backstory. So I think that's really the vulnerability piece, and that piece is important to ask for help, especially women, Black women. We do not know how to ask for help. I got this.
You do not have to be strong. The whole like strong Black woman.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, actually, I'm just me, and I don't always have to be strong. Like, I don't always have to be strong. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And really leaning into people that can lift you up and support you instead of you being the one supporting everybody else all the time. That's hard for us to do. Now, listen, I'm saying it like I do it all the time. I'm not really great. I'm trying to practice.
We try.
I'm trying. So I don't want anybody to think I got this down. I definitely don't have it down. I'm still reaching out and asking for help, and it's hard, but I'm doing it.
Yes, this is good. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So we know to find the Exhale app, we know where to find that. But how can people find you? Because are you still coaching during this time?
Yeah.
People, let's say somebody wants to work with you, send you a message. Like, how can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at kataramccarty.com. You can go there, and all the things are there. All the things that I do and services that I offer on there. You can message me from there. Follow me on Instagram. Follow Exhale app on Instagram. Yeah, that's it. KataraMcCarty.com. Super easy.
Super easy. Thank you so much for making space to come on.
This was wonderful. This was wonderful. This was like, I felt like I sat with a therapist.
You did. I know. So
I was like, I sat with a therapist. I feel better.
So when I first started podcasting, I think I overthought it, and my husband listened to the first one. He's like, "You're in your head too much." He's like, "Just treat it like a session." I'm like, "Oh, duh! I just talk. We're fine." So,
yeah, so good. Can't wait to do it again.
Yes, I'm so glad that you're on. And then when I'm on Katara's podcast, I'm going to share that with the world. So thank you so much for your light, your spirit, and your heart. You are appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me, Celeste. I really appreciate it. It was fun. It was a fun evening. Thank you.
I so love talking to Katara. So amazing. I'm going to keep talking about this app because she really did not have to create this, and she did, and it shows her heart. So make sure you download the app, support Katara, follow her on social media platforms, Excel app on Instagram. You can follow Katara Mccarty. And if you want to support the podcast, all you got to do is share this episode with somebody that you love. Rate me where you listen to podcasts. You can also support my Patreon. You can find it at Celeste Therapist. If you want to have a guided journal that can help you shift the way you think, I have a guided journal. I also have a book called Relationship Goals you can find on my website, celestetherapist.com. And of course, if you want to follow me on all social media platforms, just search Celeste Therapist. And until next time, beautiful people, I will talk to you later.